Welcome to Rotary Reads. Rotary International is a worldwide service organization composed of 1.2 million members in about 129 different countries. If there's a Rotary Club in your area, you're probably quite familiar with the work that Rotary does, at least in its own community, whether it's cleaning ditches or putting many dollars into some large improvements in your town, whether it's supporting youth through the schools or through sports teams, art communities, and that sort of thing. You're probably, as I said, quite familiar. But there's another side to Rotary, and that's the international side, where we try to get involved with clubs around the world and share some of the things that we can do together. Rotary International puts out a magazine each month, I think it's in 27 different languages, and it goes out to all the members. And so Rotary Reads is an attempt to share some of those articles with you, the viewer. I'm Dave Bennett, a member of the Rotary Club of Neepawa here in Manitoba, and my guest today, and to help with the reading, is Wayne Jacobsen, the president of our club. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you, Dave. My pleasure.
Glad to have you here. Maybe first, Wayne, tell me how you got involved in Rotary. What happened to how did you find out about us?
I was stationed in Winnipeg with the RCMP, and a fellow member was a member of the Charleswood Rotary Club. And at that particular time, Rotary had a program called the Group Study Exchange, which involved non-Rotarians who were in various professions, who would be headed by a Rotarian, and that team would go to another country somewhere in the world and give the opportunity of seeing what their profession looked like in that other country. So as I said, in 1992, he put my name forward. I was selected to go on the team, and we traveled to Japan. And after the exchange was completed, that gave me the opportunity of seeing firsthand some of the activities and involvement of Rotary around the world. And I think, as many people wonder, sitting in Neepawa, Manitoba, what can I do to make a difference in other parts of the world? And that experience gave that to me. And when I came back, I was invited to join Rotary. And initially I joined the St. James Rotary Club. And then when I was transferred with the RCMP out here to Neepawa, I came in 1995, and I continued belonging to the Rotary Club here in Neepawa.
Well, we're certainly glad you came to Neepawa, because you're an avid Rotarian and a great member of our club, Wayne, and we thank you for all that you do for the club. So what magazine article, what issue are you going to tell us about today?
Well, this is the latest issue of the magazine you mentioned, the Rotary magazine, and it is an article written by Diana Schoberg, and it really sort of highlights in a very understandable way exactly how Rotary does make a difference in this world.
Get to it.
All right then. So Rotary International has 7 areas of focus that, guided by the international organization, clubs throughout the world try and focus on. And in 2020, as this article will mention, Rotary added the 7th focus, and that 7th focus is the environment. So the article will actually highlight how we're making a difference throughout the world. So I'll begin by, starting at the front of the article. Protecting the environment has always been important to Rotarians. Now, Rotary has made it official. On the 26th of June 2020, then Rotary President Mark Daniel Maloney made a momentous announcement. The environment would become a new area of focus for Rotary. It was one of the final achievements of a term disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic and capped by Rotary's first virtual convention. Ultimately, the proposal passed the trustees unanimously. The board approved it unanimously, and I had this great satisfaction. Sitting in my living room, Maloney said during a recent interview over Zoom. The moment was built upon decades of Rotary interest. In 1990-91, Rotary President Paulo V. C. Costa made the environment a focus of his term, creating the Preserve Planet Earth Committee to look at ways clubs and members could carry out environmental initiatives. Surveys have found that the environment is one of the top-ranking causes among members of the Rotary family. Over the decades, Rotary members have carried out thousands of projects to protect the environment. In just 5 years, global grants totaling $18 million have funded projects that help support the environment while also focusing on one of Rotary's causes, such as providing clean water and sanitation, growing local economies, and supporting education. Now that the environment is itself one of Rotary's causes, members have even more opportunities to focus on issues that are important to them. The boundless creativity, enthusiasm, and determination of Rotarians everywhere, combined with their willingness to take on significant problems, make them particularly suited to make an impact on the environment, says 2017-18 Rotary International President Ian H.S. Risley, who chaired an environmental issue task force that championed the new area of focus. Read on to find how Rotary members have already been supporting the environment and to learn about new kinds of projects that will be eligible for global grant funding as of July the 1st.
And we can mention, like, the global grant funding really is how clubs in Canada can get involved with a club in, say, Africa through a global grant program, perhaps a water project or sanitation project in their area. And it's through the funds that we can access that has been generated from funds through all Rotary clubs in the world going into the pot. And then as projects come up, use those funds to move those projects forward.
Right, and I think, and as you mentioned, Dave, there are Rotary clubs, organized groups in 129 different countries. And the way the global grants work is, for example, if Nipua Rotary Club was interested in partnering with a club in Uganda to provide a new well for a remote community, well, it's Rotary Club working with Rotary Club. And there's a high level of, when you apply for a global grant from Rotary Foundation, there's a high degree of oversight put in place so that we're confident that the money we raise here and donate to that project, there are Rotarians right there in that community overseeing the project and making sure that the money goes where it's supposed to go and that the project is completed. And that's really important.
And sustainable. The sustainability is one of the main checkpoints in all of these projects, that anything that's put forth, it is a sustainable thing. It's not going to need money coming in all the time. You get it, it's there, and it's sustainable on itself.
Yes, and the local community has to be able to do that, maintain it.
Right.
We, as Rotarians, organize it, get it up and running, and as you say, it has to be a type of project that then the local people themselves can keep it going.
Exactly.
All right.
So we have some examples of that in this article continues for a number of pages, I know. So.
All right, I'll continue on with one of the initiatives under the heading of recycling. In Campo Moura, Brazil, only 5% of garbage is recycled, and workers at the local recycling facility lack the equipment needed to increase productivity. Without a conveyor belt, they had to sort recyclable materials at tables and move them by hand, requiring extra time and effort. And their outdated press was slow and created bales of recyclables that were smaller than standard for the regional market. Working with a local environmental program that coordinates the recycling cooperative, members of the Rotary Clubs of Campo Moura and Little Rock, Arkansas, developed a project to increase workers' capacity to separate and process recyclable materials, providing both economic and environmental benefits. The project, supported by a $33,066 global grant in the Community Economic Development Area of Focus, funded the purchase of equipment to improve worker safety and efficiency, and provided environmental and financial training. Workers sorted an additional 2.63 tons of recyclables per month after the grant project was implemented, and their income increased nearly 25% per month.
So there are a lot of benefits just from that one little project. Well, I guess it's a little bigger than little projects, I suppose, but in terms of the breadth of everything in the world, it's a one small project to get recycling improved in their area. And they overlap with the other focuses really too, because if you've got your recycling going properly, then you're not filling up your landfill as much. And we're not creating a water sanitation problem perhaps. And so these issues all do definitely overlap.
Right. And again, as the article mentions, it was initiated as a economic development grant at the start, but as you mentioned, the benefits were far greater than that. You know,
just a thought went through my head here from 40 years ago or whatever, when my kids were in elementary school. I got to give a shout out to the elementary teachers of our community in particular. It was them that got recycling into the heads of our kids, and they brought it home. Like, I wasn't really a recyclable kind of guy, I don't think, back then, didn't think much about it. But when my kids were bringing home the ideas and we have to do this and so on, well, then I became, more conscious of the need for recycling and so on. So, hey, a big shout out to those elementary school teachers.
Well, they were the early adopters.
Well, I'm sure others were too, but I just remember them, and I always think of that when recycling comes up. So,
well, it's the little tiny thing that I do, compounded by everyone else in the community, makes a significant difference.
Yep. How can I be a little cog and help? Well, there's exactly how it happened there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. What else have we got?
All right, the article goes on. The next heading is solar lights. In the remote villages of Dandini and, well, I'm going to give this a shot, but Kathani in eastern Kenya, families live on less than $1 per day, and their homes are not connected to any electrical grid. Most cannot afford kerosene or paraffin to light their homes, which means students cannot see to do their homework in the evenings. Members of the Rotary Clubs of Sunshine Coast, Seychelles, British Columbia, and Machakos, Kenya, learned about the problem while working in the area on other projects. In 2014, the Rotarians embarked on a project supported by a $101,564 global grant in the basic education and literacy area of focus to bring environmentally friendly solar power into homes and schools. About 1,500 students attended the local schools, were each provided a solar light under a rent-to-own program. Students pay $1 per month, less than the cost of paraffin, for 8 months, after which they own the light. The proceeds are used to provide another student with a solar light the following year. Project partner Kenya Connect, noting that the time students spend reading has tripled with the introduction of the solar lights, described the program as a game changer in efforts to improve the quality of education for rural schools. The grant, combined with funding from the Rotary Foundation Canada and the Government of Canada, also created computer labs at 2 schools and a solar system to provide enough power for the entire setup. More than 200 teachers received training on digital learning and ways to better make use of computers in their teaching.
Well, that's quite a project. They had a lot going on there. You know, the thing that came to mind as you were reading that was the $1 a month that the kids pay on a rent to own. Well, if you're paying a little bit, all of a sudden you've got ownership in that, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to take care of it and so on. And then they use that money for the next year to buy these lights for kids the next year down. And there's this wow, say that, David. There's the sustainability part of it, that in fact the project itself is generating some funds to continue it on, at least that portion of it was anyway, so the kids could have their own. What about those lights look like?
I wonder.
There's a picture here in the magazine. I don't know if people can
Probably not. It doesn't
Not
really
really.
show the light,
No.
just the effect of the light. But what really struck me with reference to this article is how we as Canadians, North Americans, if you want to call it developed countries, take electricity for granted.
Oh, don't we?
We could have a major power storm and our power goes out for 2 hours. We're wondering what's going on. When are they going to fix this? And made me realize that there are many, many parts of our world where electricity is just not available.
Yeah.
And how that impacts other aspects of your life. And if you're a student or a child and your parents can't afford paraffin or kerosene, well, that, as the article says, it really stunts your ability to get educated.
Well, lighting, I mean, I guess in terms of, actual basic living, you don't really need light because you're going to have light half the time.
Yeah.
So you just organize yourself. But, I mean, that's not the way things work. And these solar, I mean, there we are with the environment again. Solar-friendly energy is definitely going to help our environment.
Yeah, like at one time, I remember hearing about this new thing that's coming down the pipe called a cell phone. And wondering, how's that going to function without wires? And lo and behold, we all know that completely changed our world. And I think that is that ideology is transferable to sources of power. We don't need to have hydro. I mean, if it's hydroelectric power, obviously it's transmitted by a wire. But if there are so many other sources of power that can be applied that don't require that same infrastructure.
Correct. And hopefully we get rid of the coal generators. I mean, we're certainly polluting our atmosphere with that. I know there's arguments on both sides in terms of costs for some of the solar energy. It was very costly to start with, but those costs of pretty well everything do eventually come down.
Right. And we are so dependent on hydrocarbons, but I do believe that we as a world can do a much better job at reducing our dependency. Whether that's the internal combustion vehicle or creating sources of energy. I think that we have to do a better job of reducing our usage of hydrocarbons.
Well, that sun is burning out all that energy consistently all the time, so we may as well be using it.
As I understand, it's been going for about 1 billion years, so I'm sure it's not going to burn out tomorrow. All right, the next part of the article is titled Water Diversion. Residents of 2 communities near Aurangabad, India, get their water from wells that are recharged annually by monsoon rains. But within a few months after the rains end, the wells run dry and community members either must go further afield to fetch water or must buy it, which many cannot afford. Members of the Rotary Clubs of Aurangabad East and Charleswood, Roseville, Australia, collaborated on an eco-friendly solution using a simple, traditional technology: check dams. These small dams are constructed across gullies to control the rate of stormwater flow. They decrease erosion and increase the amount of water that percolates into the ground. More than 200,000 check dams have been built across India for this purpose. A check dam constructed in India in the 2nd century is one of the world's oldest water diversion structures still in use. In Aurangabad, the monsoon rains flow via a channel across a government-owned sports training center toward the sewage-contaminated Cam River. Supported by a $36,500 global grant in the water, sanitation, and hygiene area of focus, Rotary members funded the construction of 2 concrete check dams on the campus. The increased percolation of the monsoon rains into the grounds is expected to lengthen the period each year during which the area's 20,000 residents can obtain water from their wells. The dams have an anticipated lifespan of 75 years and require little maintenance.
I just noticed that it's an Australian club that has got involved in this, and I know a little bit about it. I taught school over there in Australia. We were back there 10 years ago visiting some friends, and they lived in a town of about 5,000 or 6,000 or thing, and they, and pretty well everybody else around, had water collection off of their roofs. They didn't use the town water all the time for washing dishes and for whatever else. They had this other water source, and pretty well everybody was doing it. They just were conserving water and using the water that was coming down from the sky directly. Yeah, it really amazed me that, just out back, just outside the back kitchen door, there was a little collection thing that they collected their rainwater and they used it whenever they could.
Yeah, and again, it speaks to how privileged we are specifically in Canada and North America. We take water for granted, and sometimes when I'm running a bath or rinsing dishes before putting them into the dishwasher, I'm thinking like, how wasteful is this? Like, there's parts of the world where this water would be so precious and we take it for granted.
Yeah, and ours is pretty clean because there's lots of places where it's not clean, even in Canada, as we well know, that
Yes.
water issues in some of the remote areas are very much concerned. And I know you and I have talked about that in the past too, of some of the areas of help that Rotary might help in some areas like that, perhaps. So
Again, so that's the impact on the environment, but the initiative really was, as one of the focuses of Rotary is safe water and sanitation throughout the world. So again, it dovetailed between the two. All right, the next part of the article goes on to water conservation. A series of global grant projects of the Rotary Clubs of Haifa, Israel, and Coral Springs, Parkland, Florida, are using an environmental education program to unite students of different cultures and beliefs around a topic of mutual importance in the desert region: water conservation. Students from 60 schools participated in the second phase of the project, which was supported by a $152,723 global grant in the peace building and conflict resolution area of focus. Schools selected research topics of interest related to water conservation or technology, such as desalination, rainwater harvesting, or water leaks. The teachers and students were supported in their science projects through equipment and connections with experts, such as engineers, biologists, or physicists. More than 150 teachers received training in 26 training events. Most schools in Israel are separated by culture or religion, whether Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or Druze. Through the cross-cultural component of the global grant project, students visited one another's schools to see the research projects and came together for joint field trips to visit industrial facilities or to hear related speakers, giving an opportunity for interaction that they didn't have otherwise.
this project here, I mean, I just think of pretty well all of the areas of focus of Rotary are involved in here. You've got the water conservation, you've got the basic education of kids. That was really hit me when I read that about the 4 religious groups that were able to cross culture and learn from each other and visit each other and be involved in the same project. So it makes them feel part of a group together, kind of thing. And well, that's what our Rotary Exchange, student exchange program is trying to do as well, is to get high school students from many different countries together to learn about what it's like in the other world and so on. It works towards our fellowship and peace building focus as well. So they really do cross all these projects.
Well, and as the article mentions, peace building is one of the areas of focus of Rotary, and it really struck me when I was on the group study exchange to Japan, a completely different culture,
Yes.
a completely different language from what I was used to. But it gave me the opportunity of seeing and experiencing people from that culture that really have the exact same bottom goals that you and I do. You know, safety for our families,
Yes.
a roof over our heads, food on the table, fresh water, and a job. And you know, when we do the work through Rotary with this peace building, and it dovetails into the other areas of service or of focus for Rotary, that impacts. And it takes away, I think, and this article here is a really good example of it takes away the whole stigma of us and them. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have different languages. Yes, we have different religions. But we really are all of us are after the same thing.
To me, that is the biggest reason that I'm a Rotarian, is to try and find out and get other people to, communicate with other people around the world. And once you understand somebody and look them in the eye, they can't be an enemy near as much.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
And that's where this initiative in Israel
Yeah,
is
well,
so
that's
great.
one of, should I say the side effect of it or the main effect? I don't know, because there's 2 or 3 effects in this particular article there. Good stuff, Wayne, good stuff.
Yeah. All right, then the next part of the article, sustainable farming. The indigenous Tarahumara people live in the remote slopes and canyons of Mexico's Sierra Madre Mountains, growing ancient varieties of corn and beans for sustenance. But the seeds for these plants, handed down through generations, were wiped out by a prolonged drought. In the wake of the resulting widespread hunger, many young people and women with children left their homes to beg on city streets. Members of the Rotary Clubs of Chihuahua Campestre, Mexico, and St. Augustine Sunrise, Florida, worked with a non-governmental organization called Barefoot Seeds to facilitate community discussions with Tarahumara leaders to come up with solutions. Community leaders said they wanted seed banks and improved water storage to support continued sustenance farming. A project supported by a $49,900 global grant in the Community Economic Development area of focus established seed banks, demonstration farms, and plots to grow additional seeds using sustainable farming methods, reintroduced goats to improve soil fertilization, installed rainwater harvesting equipment, and provided training. The project also provided solar-powered chest freezers to further extend the shelf life of stored seeds. At least 500 Tarahumara farmers received seeds, goats, and improved water access the first year.
There's so much in there in just that short 3 or 4 paragraphs as to what that one project took care of and so on. The one thing I particularly noticed, it reminded me that, and you said this earlier, Wayne, that there, to get a global grant for a project, there are a number of checkpoints that you have to kind of check off. Sustainability, we talked, was one. But one of the very first things that's mentioned, and rightly so, is that you find out what they need. Mm-hmm. Don't go in with a preconceived idea that we're going to give you this, when in fact really that's not the problem, or that's really not what they need, or what they perceive as the need. So it indicated that the Tarahumara leaders to come up with the solutions and so on, and they said they wanted seed banks, that was the way they thought that, and so then the project kind of developed from there. But you go to the area first of all and see what their perceived need is. If it's not the same as yours, then you need to get on the same page before you start.
Right, and that is part and parcel of what I explained earlier on with reference to Rotary International having oversight.
Right.
So, it may be through, especially this day and age with Zoom meetings and international meetings, that 2 clubs in various parts of the world connect, and one club might say, well, we have a real need here for this type of project. But in order for those clubs to apply for the grant and for Rotary International to even consider the grant, there are specific criteria that must be met. And again, as you said, one of those criteria is whose need is this, yours or theirs? And that's why I think I feel so good about what Rotary does around the world, because there is that high degree of oversight.
Well, and we're considered one of the highest level, we've been rated the highest level of a organization that people give money to, a charitable organization, although we're locally, our own club is not a charitable organization, but Rotary International is, and so money donated there, can receive receipts. And we're considered, we're ranked in the, but I'm not sure if 1 or 5 is the top level, but we're on the top level of oversight considered by independent bodies around the world.
Right, and I think that's further supported by the fact that the Bill and Belinda Gates Foundation specifically partners with Rotary on the Polio Plus program throughout the world, Rotary's initiative to eradicate polio throughout the world, and we're this far away.
That close, 2 countries to go.
Yeah, and then just the historical role that Rotary has had with the United Nations. Rotary was there on the ground, on the convention floor when the United Nations was established. And so there's that. So when the United Nations is looking for organizations that might be sort of the lead into various countries that need development, quite often it's Rotary that they turn to.
We were there on the ground floor when the United Nations was established. And they just had an anniversary, I forget, it was a year or so ago.
I think it was 70, for some reason, don't quote me on this, I think it was 1950 or somewhere in there.
That's what's running in my mind.
Just post World War II, I think, and
Yep.
certainly Rotary was there.
Yeah, that's right.
All right,
So we have time for another one, I think, here.
Okay.
For sure.
The next section is titled Eco Stoves. A traditional wood fire for cooking produces the equivalent of 400 cigarettes worth of smoke in an hour. With around 3 billion people around the world still relying on such fires, many of them inside of homes, more people die from indoor air pollution than malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS combined, according to the World Health Organization. Additionally, the black carbon emitted from these fires, which absorbs sunlight, is believed to contribute to climate change, while the need for wood drives deforestation. Members of the Rotary Clubs of Guatemala, Del Este, and Los Angeles, California, work together to help families living in San Lucas Toliman, Guatemala, on the southeastern shore of Lake Haitlan. The lake, which is the primary source of drinking water for communities including San Lucas Toliman, is severely contaminated in part because of storm runoff from areas where trees have been cut down for fuel for cooking fires. Supported by a $160,000 global grant in the disease prevention and treatment area of focus, the project provided 1,000 families with eco stoves that vent to the outside and decrease the amount of firewood needed by 70%. Each stove is expected to reduce carbon emissions by 3 to 4 tons per year.
Each stove, that's amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing. I mean, this is just one little stove, but by having combustion, a controlled combustion, and not just the open fire, that you can cut down that much of the firewood.
Well, the heat is so much more concentrated and specific to its purpose, and it's just another great example of what I spoke about at the beginning of this program. Is we need to figure out ways of better utilizing or better conducting what we do in the environment, and this is a really good example. It doesn't eliminate wood fires, but it's like putting emission controls on vehicles. If we can reduce the amount of emissions coming out of vehicles by 50 or 60 or 80%, that's a huge impact on our environment.
Well, and that has been done, but we're still needing to do more.
Oh yes,
we're still needing to do more in these things, and to cut the firewood down by 70% that you need. So you've hopefully stopped ruining the forests and deforestating the area and so on. So
Well,
those are really, and what was the cost of that? $160,000 global grant. So
Right.
these are not large amounts of money really in the total look of it all. Most of these were running around, $70, $80, $100, $200,000 to do a grant and a project. And how many people did they help?
Exactly, 1,000 families.
So.
That's, pretty close to the size of Nipowa, I would suggest.
Or-
We have 5,000 people. They probably have more than 2 children per family, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so
You know,
could
so-
easy be. Exactly, yeah, that's great.
So do we have time for the one last part of the
Yeah,
article?
sure. Yeah, go
Let's
ahead.
squeeze it in here. It's called Clean Energy. The Berlin Polyclinic has been the main provider of primary health care in Gyumri, Armenia, since it opened in 1993 after a devastating earthquake in the region. But access to health care there remains limited. In conversations with medical center representatives, members of the Rotary Club of Gyumri learned that the clinic's ability to serve patients is significantly hampered by drastically rising energy costs. In the past decade, the cost of electricity has gone up 200%, natural gas 70%, and water 50%. Those increases, combined with inefficient heating and water heating systems, had forced the clinic to cut its hours of operation during the region's long winters. As a result, during the heating season, which runs from October till April, the clinic saw an average of 25 to 30% fewer patients. In 2017, Gyumri Rotarians worked with the Rotary Club of North Fresno, California, on a project supported by a $101,000 Rotary Foundation global grant in the maternal and child health area of focus that both increases patient access and benefits the environment. The installation of photovoltaic panels, a solar hot water system, solar heat pumps, and LED lighting was projected to reduce annual energy costs by 80%, allowing the clinic to operate at full capacity year-round, and reducing carbon emissions by 50% in the process. During the first winter heating season, with the new system, the number of patients served increased by 32%.
Those are some fantastic numbers in there as well. Wow. We were reading these and a thought crossed my mind about COVID. I mean, we always seem to come back to that in this year. I wonder how much all of these projects that Rotary has done over the last 10 years have really helped even more during this particular year. When people are, when we have the COVID situation, saving money. We've got money for other things. We've got families safer in where they live and so on. I hope it has.
Well, I would, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would maybe bet my bottom dollar, so to speak, that somewhere in this world, a Rotary Club is actively engaged in helping with the COVID-19 vaccine rollout or the educational process. I'd be very surprised if Rotary isn't there.
Well, one thing, and I've read about this, is that you mentioned our polio eradication is pretty well our major global-wide project to eradicate polio. And the infrastructure, the organizational infrastructure and the people that we have in place to all of those vaccinations and so on around the world, WHO has tapped back into Rotary for their expertise and their people as well, I guess, in terms of the COVID spread and also the vaccination process. So I'm sure that you're right, Rotarians are definitely leading the way in some areas in regards to this around the world. They certainly are.
Yeah.
Just might mention maybe before, as we wrap up, the The areas of focus, and I did write them down as they applied to each article here, Wayne, so I might just mention them again. Community economic development was mentioned with the recycling article, but it is in a couple more of the articles too, I think. The solar lights, they referenced particularly basic education and literacy, but we talked about 2 or 3 other areas that developed, worked through as well. Water diversion. That was in India and Australia, clubs that worked on that, and the focus was water, sanitation, and hygiene. And those acronym WASH, you'll hear the acronym WASH, water, W-A, sanitation and hygiene, quite often in Rotary articles and so on. The actual conversation with water, they referred to peace building and conflict resolution as the main focus for that one. Although it certainly, again, involved in others. That was $152,000. Sustainable farming, the focus was community economic development. That was Mexico and USA. Clubs, Eco Stoves that we talked about, just the second last one here. In Guatemala and USA Club was disease prevention and treatment, was the area of focus that they referenced there particularly. And the maternal and child health, the 6th area of focus, was referenced in the clean energy with the hospital there in Armenia as such. And now we have the 7th one, the environment as an area of focus. So
right.
That's great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And
coming.
again, I throw a thank you out to Diana Schoberg for writing
Yes.
the article, because it really helped me to see the difference we're making in the world.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll leave you with our little song about the 4-way test of Rotary that we apply to ourselves when we try to decide what we're going to do next. Thank you for watching.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build good? Will it better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? When we pay it forward, it will be returned. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned?